My name is Vorth Kellan, and I am quite possibly the most unfortunate being in the known galaxy. Why, you ask? Well, let me paint you a picture of absolute stupidity wrapped in military-grade arrogance. I was part of the Hegemony's 37th Conquest Fleet, which sounds impressive until you realize we were essentially the galactic equivalent of mall security guards with delusions of grandeur. The signal came from a backwater planet in the Orion Spiral. Earth, they called it. A pathetic little blue marble inhabited by bipedal apes who had barely figured out how to split atoms without blowing themselves to smithereens. Our intelligence division, and I use that term very loosely, classified them as Category 7 primitives, harmless, defenseless. Basically, space toddlers playing with sharp sticks. Commander Thrace Morvek stood before our assembled force, his four eyes gleaming with the kind of confidence that only comes from never having fought anything more dangerous than a bureaucratic form. "In fellow warriors," he announced, his voice echoing through the command deck, "today we claim another world for the glorious hegemony. These humans have been broadcasting their pathetic signals into space for decades. Music, television shows, something called reality programming that makes no sense whatsoever." Lieutenant Zara Finns, our weapons specialist, raised one of her 6 arms. "Sir, what about their military capabilities?" Morvek actually laughed. The sound was like a dying vacuum cleaner having an existential crisis. "Military capabilities? These creatures still use projectile weapons. They fire tiny pieces of metal at each other. Their most advanced vessels can barely escape their own gravity well without exploding." The bridge erupted in laughter. Oh, how we laughed. 300 seasoned warriors from 12 different species, all convinced we were about to add another trophy to our collection. I should have known right then that the universe was setting us up for the punchline of the century. Our fleet consisted of 15 dreadnoughts, each capable of glassing a continent. We had plasma cannons that could melt through asteroid fields, shield generators that could withstand stellar flares, and enough firepower to reduce a moon to cosmic dust. Against humans, with their primitive rockets and chemical explosives, it was like bringing a star destroyer to a pillow fight. The plan was simple, elegant, and completely idiotic. We would appear in their solar system, demand surrender, and when they inevitably refused, we would demonstrate our superior technology by obliterating one of their cities. Standard procedure for primitives. They would panic, submit, and we would add Earth to our ever-expanding empire. Easy victory. Minimal casualties on our side, maximum glory for everyone involved. Captain Rex Torvin, our tactical officer, pulled up holographic displays showing Earth's major population centers. "I suggest we target this one called New York," he said, pointing with his tail. "High population density, lots of infrastructure, should send the right message." "Excellent choice," Morvek agreed. "We will give them 24 of their hours to surrender unconditionally. When they refuse, as they surely will, we reduce this New York to molten slag. Then we watch them fall over themselves to capitulate." Navigation Officer Dex Harmond, a spider-like creature with way too many limbs for anyone's comfort, scuttled forward. "Sir, we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet. They appear to be welcoming us." The bridge fell silent. Welcoming us? That was new. Usually primitives either panicked, tried to hide, or launched their pitiful weapons in a futile gesture of defiance. They did not typically roll out the welcome mat for invading forces. "What kind of transmissions?" Morvek asked, his confidence wavering slightly. Armin's mandibles clicked nervously. "They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The messages are varied, but they all seem to express enthusiasm about our arrival. One transmission specifically mentions something about finally getting some decent visitors and hoping we brought better entertainment than the last guys. Now, a smart commander would have recognized this as a massive red flag. A competent military leader would have ordered immediate tactical withdrawal and requested additional intelligence. But Morvek was neither smart nor competent. He was, however, supremely arrogant. "They are obviously trying to confuse us with psychological warfare," he declared. "Crude, but expected from such a primitive species. Proceed with the original plan." We dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their solar system with all the subtlety of a supernova at a funeral. 15 massive warships, bristling with enough weaponry to sterilize a small galaxy, announcing our presence with the kind of dramatic flair that would make a theater director weep with joy. The response was immediate and baffling. "Welcome to Sol System," came a cheerful voice over the communications channel. The speaker sounded genuinely delighted, like we were old friends dropping by for dinner. "This is Admiral Janet Pierce of the Earth Defense Force. We have been expecting you." Expecting us? How could they possibly have been expecting us? Our approach had been swift and silent until the moment we arrived. "Unless they have faster-than-light communication?" Morvek whispered, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning mist. "Impossible," Torvin snorted. "Our sensors show no signs of quantum entanglement networks or tachyon pulse generators. They are still using electromagnetic radiation for communication, primitive beyond belief." Admiral Pierce continued her unnervingly friendly greeting. "We have prepared landing zones for your ships and arranged accommodations for your crews. I trust your journey was pleasant. We know how tedious long-distance space travel can be." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. This was not following the script at all. Nay, men, primitives were supposed to cower and plead, not offer us parking spaces and hotel rooms. Morvek cleared his throat and activated the response channel. "Attention, humans of Earth. I am Commander Thrace Morvek of the Hegemony Conquest Fleet. You will surrender your planet immediately or face total annihilation. You have 24 standard hours to comply." There was a pause, followed by what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "Oh, Commander Morvek," Admiral Pierce replied, her voice warm with amusement. "You really do not understand the situation at all, do you? Please, accept our invitation to land. I promise you will find our hospitality memorable." "Sir," Harmon whispered urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures throughout their system. The readings are inconsistent with their supposed technological level." "Elaborate," Morvek snapped. "Well, sir, their planet shows massive industrial complexes that do not appear on any surface scans. There are structures that seem to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And their moon," Harmon paused, his multiple eyes widening in confusion. "Their moon is not actually a moon." The bridge went dead silent, except for the ominous humming of our ship's systems. "What do you mean it is not a moon?" Morvek asked slowly. "It appears to be an artificial construct, sir. Hollow, with what looks like weapon emplacements the size of small cities." I felt my 3 stomachs drop into my lower intestines. "A fake moon? Weapon emplacements? What kind of primitives built fake moons covered in weapons?" "Sir," Communications Officer Yena Cross interrupted, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Hegemony Command." "Put it through," Morvek ordered, though his voice had lost most of its commanding authority. The holographic image of High Admiral Sven Klaus materialized before us, and even through the flickering transmission, his expression was clearly one of barely controlled panic. "Morvek, you absolute imbecile. Abort your mission immediately. Retreat to safe distance and await further orders." "Sir, we have not even begun the attack," Morvek protested. "The primitives are offering us hospitality. They appear to be welcoming us." Klaus made a sound like a deflating balloon filled with existential dread. "You fool. Do you know what happened to the 12th Conquest Fleet, or the 22nd? Or any of the 17 other fleets we have sent to that cursed system?" A cold sensation spread through my exoskeleton. 17 other fleets? We had been told this was a routine subjugation of an uncontacted primitive world. "Sir, our briefings indicated no previous contact," Torvin said weakly. "The briefings were classified, you walking disaster," Klaus roared. "Earth is not a primitive world. It is a trap. A honeypot. Those harmless humans have been luring conquest fleets to their system for the past 2 centuries and making them disappear." The communications channel suddenly crackled with interference, and Admiral Pierce's voice cut through the static. "Oh my. It seems your superiors are trying to spoil the surprise," she said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "How terribly unsporting of them." Commander Morvac, since you are already here, why not stay for a proper visit? We have prepared such wonderful activities for you and your crew. Retreat. Klaus screamed through the deteriorating connection. Full retreat. Maximum speed. Get out of there before they activate the transmission cut off in a burst of static. The bridge fell silent except for the increasingly urgent alarms from our sensor stations. Sir, Harmon reported, his voice shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. Massive energy buildup detected throughout the system. Whatever they are powering up, it is orders of magnitude beyond anything in our databases. All ships, immediate retreat. Morvac shouted, full reverse, maximum speed. But as our ships began to turn away from Earth, the stars around us began to change. The familiar constellations shifted and twisted, and space itself seemed to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. Navigation failure. Harmon screeched. Hyperspace drive is not responding. Subspace communications are being jammed. Sir, we cannot leave. Admiral Pierce's voice returned, now carrying an undertone that made my scales stand on end. Now, Commander. Leaving so soon, but you just arrived. And we have gone to so much trouble to prepare for your visit. It would be frightfully rude to run off without at least saying hello properly. On the main view screen, Earth began to glow, not with the soft blue light of a living world, but with something far more ominous. Geometric patterns of energy spread across the planet's surface, turning the entire world into what looked like the universe's most terrifying Christmas ornament. What are they? Morvac whispered. Before anyone could answer, our ship shuddered as something enormous passed by our starboard side, something that definitely had not been there moments before. Sir, Finn's reported from her weapons station, massive unknown contact, bearing 27 Mark IV. It is, she paused, apparently unable to process what her instruments were telling her. It is approximately the size of a small planet and appears to be biological in nature. Through the view screen, we could see it, a creature of impossible size floating through space as easily as a fish through water. Its hide was covered in what looked like cities, with lights twinkling across its surface like stars. Multiple eyes, each the size of our entire ship, focused on us with unmistakable intelligence. Greetings, little metal fish. A new voice rumbled through our communication system. The speaker sounded ancient, amused, and thoroughly predatory. Welcome to our hunting grounds. That was when I realized that Earth was not a planet at all. It was bait. And we were not conquerors. We were prey. The space around us filled with impossible creatures, each one defying everything we thought we knew about physics, biology, and the fundamental nature of reality itself. Ships that looked like living coral reefs, beings of pure energy crackling with malevolent intelligence, in structures that existed in dimensions our sensors could not even properly detect. Commander, I said quietly, I believe we may have made a slight tactical error. Morvac turned to look at me, his 4 eyes wide with the kind of terror usually reserved for tax audits and dinner with the in-laws. You think? He squeaked. Admiral Pierce's laughter echoed through our ship like the promise of very creative doom. Oh, gentlemen, you have no idea what you have gotten yourselves into, but do not worry. We will take very good care of you. Humans are nothing if not hospitable hosts. As our fleet found itself surrounded by entities that made our worst nightmares look like pleasant daydreams, I could not help but think that perhaps our intelligence division should have done just a little bit more research before classifying humans as harmless primitives, but it was far too late for such considerations now. What happened next can only be described as the galaxy's most expensive and lethal magic show, with the US playing the role of very unwilling volunteers. The creature that had greeted us as little metal fish began to move closer, and I got my first really good look at what humanity had apparently befriended. Or enslaved. Or possibly married, given how weird humans turned out to be. Beautiful, is it not? Admiral Pierce's voice carried a note of genuine pride. We call her Grandmother Void. She has been with us for about 300 years now. Found her drifting between galaxies, half-starved and lonely. Humans have always been good at adopting strays. Grandmother Void's massive eye focused on our ship, And I swear I could feel her amusement pressing against my mind like a cat deciding whether or not to play with a mouse before eating it. They taste like metal and fear, the creature observed thoughtfully to Admiral Pierce. It's not particularly appetizing, but the fear adds a nice seasoning. Oh, Dad. Now, Pierce chided gently. Remember what we discussed about playing with your food. These are our guests, and guests deserve proper treatment. I was beginning to understand that humans had a very unique definition of proper treatment. Commander Morvek, to his credit, was still trying to salvage some dignity from this cosmic disaster. Admiral Pierce, we demand safe passage out of your system. The Hegemony will not stand for this treatment of a diplomatic mission. The laughter that responded came from multiple sources, not just Pierce, but from voices all around us, speaking in languages that made my translator circuits smoke and complain. Diplomatic mission? A new voice chimed in. This one sounded younger, more energetic. Oh, Commander, you came here with 15 dreadnoughts and announced your intention to obliterate one of our cities. That is not diplomacy. That is what we humans call being a complete jackass. Lieutenant Sarah Quinn. Language, Pierce admonished with mock severity. Sorry, Admiral. I meant to say being a thoroughly unpleasant person with aggressive tendencies and poor social skills. Much better. And our weapons officer, Finns, was frantically trying to get some kind of tactical reading on our situation. Sir, sensors are showing approximately 400 unknown contacts surrounding our position. Energy signatures are impossible. Some of them are reading as negative mass, others appear to exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously. And at least 12 of them seem to be made entirely of crystallized time. Crystallized time? Morvek croaked. Do not ask me to explain it, sir. My instruments are having what I can only describe as a nervous breakdown. Lieutenant Quinn's voice returned, now broadcast on a frequency that somehow made our ship's hull vibrate in harmony. Oh, you noticed the Temporal Collective. They joined us about 50 years ago. Lovely beings. That is, once you get used to experiencing conversations backwards and upside down. They were being hunted by some empire that wanted to weaponize causality. We offered them sanctuary in exchange for helping us with our little hobbies. What hobbies? I asked, though I was pretty sure I did not want to know the answer. Well, Vorth Kellan, Quinn replied, somehow knowing my name despite the fact that I had never transmitted it. We collect things. Art, music, literature, interesting rock formations, extinct species, pocket dimensions, the usual. But our favorite hobby is collecting conquest fleets. The deck beneath my feet lurched as something latched onto our hull. Through the nearest porthole, I could see what looked like metallic vines growing across our ship's surface, but vines that pulsed with their own internal light and seemed to be whispering to each other in a language made of mathematics. The ship is being boarded, sir. Security Chief Mara Stone reported over the intercom. The intruders are. They are. She paused, apparently struggling with her vocabulary. They appear to be ambulatory geometry with a sense of humor, sir. Ambulatory geometry? Morvek repeated weakly. Yes, sir. They just walked through our blast doors like they were not there, rearranged the corridor into a pretzel shape and left a note saying thanks for visiting. Please proceed to the gift shop. Admiral Pierce's voice carried a note of genuine hospitality that was somehow more terrifying than any threat. Commander Morvek, please bring your senior staff to the main deck. We have prepared a little presentation for you. I think you will find it educational. Now, the smart thing would have been to barricade ourselves in the bridge and fight to the last warrior. The practical thing would have been to surrender immediately and hope for quick deaths. But Morvek, displaying the kind of leadership that had gotten us into this mess in the first place, decided to go with the option that satisfied no one. We will comply, he announced, but I want guarantees of safe passage for my crew. Oh, Commander, Pierce replied, her voice warm with something that might have been genuine sympathy. You still do not understand. Your crew is perfectly safe. We are not monsters, we are collectors. And collectors take very good care of their acquisitions. And the walk through our own ship to the main deck was an exercise in existential horror. The corridors had been subtly altered, with walls that bent in directions that should not exist and lighting that cast shadows upward. Crew members we passed stood frozen in place, not dead or injured, but simply paused, like someone had pressed a cosmic pause button. Temporal stasis, Lieutenant Quinn helpfully explained as we passed my friend Jack Voss, frozen mid-step with his mouth open in what was probably going to be a very creative curse. Completely harmless. They are just experiencing time at a different rate. From their perspective, this conversation is happening over the course of several nanoseconds, and we reached the main deck to find it had been transformed into something resembling a lecture hall crossed with a natural history museum. Our crew members were arranged in neat rows of chairs, all in temporal stasis, facing a raised platform where Admiral Pierce stood waiting for us. She was not what I had expected. Humans, according to our intelligence files, were supposed to be primitive bipeds with limited lifespans and even more limited imagination. Admiral Pierce looked like she could have been any middle-aged military officer from any species in the galaxy, except for her eyes. Her eyes held the kind of depth that comes from seeing things that fundamentally change your perspective on reality. "Welcome, gentlemen," she said, gesturing for us to take seats in the front row. "Please, make yourselves comfortable. This may take a while." Behind her, a massive holographic display activated, showing what appeared to be a timeline stretching back thousands of years. "Let me tell you a story," Pierce began, her voice taking on the tone of a professor addressing particularly slow students. "About 5,000 years ago, give or take a century, humanity was indeed a primitive species confined to a single world. We had just figured out agriculture and were very proud of our ability to hit things with sticks. The display showed early humans doing exactly that, hitting various things with progressively more sophisticated sticks. But then we encountered our first visitors from beyond the stars, the Kronorian Empire, if memory serves, lovely beings. Very advanced, completely convinced of their own superiority. They arrived with a fleet much like yours, demanding surrender and threatening to glass our cities if we refused. The display shifted to show reptilian beings in advanced spacecraft, weapons trained on primitive human settlements. Now, most species at our level of development would have either surrendered immediately or fought hopelessly and been destroyed. But humans did something different. We said that is interesting. Tell us more about this advanced technology of yours. Morvek shifted uncomfortably in his chair. What do you mean? Pierce smiled, and the expression was both warm and absolutely terrifying. We learned, Commander. While the Kronorians were busy demonstrating their superiority, we were studying their ships, their weapons, their biology, their psychology. And when we had learned everything we could, we thanked them for the education and sent them on their way. Sent them on their way? I asked. Oh yes. We gave them a lovely parting gift, a collection of our finest art, music, and literature. Beautiful stuff, really. Unfortunately, we forgot to mention that human art has certain properties when exposed to advanced alien neural networks. The display showed Kronorian ships drifting through space, their crews apparently catatonic. Turns out, Pierce continued cheerfully, human creativity is mildly psychoactive to most other species. Kronorian brains, in particular, could not process the concept of jazz music without undergoing what their medical texts called voluntary consciousness restructuring. They spent the next 50 years as traveling musicians, spreading the good news about bebop throughout the galaxy. Captain Torvin made a strangled sound. You weaponized music? Not weaponized, Pierce corrected. Enhanced, big difference. Weaponizing would be mean. Enhancement is educational. The timeline advanced, showing more and more alien fleets arriving at Earth, and each one leaving in increasingly bizarre circumstances. The Vec-Tar Dominion tried to invade us with a fleet of biological ships. We introduced them to the concept of comedy, and their vessels spent 3 years laughing so hard they forgot to maintain orbital velocity. The crystalline hierarchy attempted to assimilate our planet with nanotechnology. We showed them human internet memes, and their collective intelligence achieved enlightenment and decided to become a traveling philosophical circus. This is impossible, Morvac protested. You cannot defeat advanced military technology with entertainment. Pierce raised an eyebrow. Commander, you have been in our system for approximately 6 hours. In that time, your weapons have been converted into art installations. Your shields are now generating lovely patterns of colored light. And your crew is experiencing time dilation that will leave them with the most relaxing vacation they have ever had. Tell me again what is impossible. She had a point. A horrifying reality-bending point, but a point nonetheless. But why? I asked. Why not just destroy us? You clearly have the capability. Pierce's expression softened, and for a moment she looked genuinely sad. Because destruction is easy, Vorth. Any species with sufficient technology can destroy, but creation, transformation, growth, that takes real power. Every fleet that comes here leaves us with new knowledge, new perspectives, new friends. And every species that tries to conquer us ends up discovering something better than conquest. The display showed Earth as it truly was, not a single planet, but a nexus point where hundreds of different species lived and worked together. Their combined knowledge and creativity building something unprecedented in galactic history. Your hegemony sends conquest fleets because they believe might makes right. Pierce continued, but we have learned something different. Imagination makes possible. Compassion makes permanent, and curiosity makes everything else irrelevant. So what happens to us now? Morvac asked quietly. Pierce smiled, and this time the expression was genuinely warm. Now, Commander, you get to choose. You can return to your empire with a message that Earth is under protection of forces they cannot comprehend or combat. Or, she paused dramatically. You can stay and help us build something amazing, and if we choose to stay, then you become part of the greatest experiment in galactic history. We are building a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest, creativity instead of destruction, and wonder instead of fear. It is not easy work, but it is the most important work anyone has ever done. I looked around at my fellow officers, seeing the same mixture of terror and fascination in their eyes that I felt in my own hearts. What about our crews? I asked. They will be given the same choice, once they have had time to process what they have experienced. Some will choose to return home. Others will stay and help us grow. Both choices are valid and respected. Admiral Pierce stepped down from the platform and approached us directly. The signal that lured you here was not a trap, gentlemen. It was an invitation. An invitation to become something better than what you were. The question is, will you accept it? I am writing this account from my quarters aboard the living ship Harmony of Unlikely Friendships, 6 months after our arrival at Earth. Of my original crew. About half chose to return home with Morvac's report. The other half stayed to help humanity and their impossible allies build their impossible dream. I stayed because I realized something that day on the main deck. In all my years of military service, conquering worlds and subjugating species, I had never once felt the joy I saw in Admiral Pierce's eyes when she talked about what they were building. Humans, it turns out, are not primitive at all. They are something far more dangerous and wonderful. They are teachers, and their lesson is simple but revolutionary. The universe is not a place to be conquered, it is a place to be shared. And that, my friends, is the most terrifying and beautiful truth any warrior can learn.